Hi, everybody. Happy Wet Nose Wednesday. So happy to have you here. Oh, we have a couple of extra special guests today.
So in case you're new around here, I am Hillary Buchholz, and I'm here with Patty Quinn, and we are the co-founders of We Heart Hounds, but we also have some amazing special guests that you can see with us here today.
We all have our Cheshire grins from ear to ear. Oh my gosh, this is such a great day. So yes, as Hillary mentioned, we have an extra special guest and her guest along with us, Poppy. Oh my gosh, she's so adorable. So Teresa Rhyne and her, of course, the dog gets introduced first, right?
Of course, yes. I would be the same way.
And Teresa Rhyne, multi-talented, wonderful lady, best-selling author, lawyer, dog rescuer. Her love of beagles has inspired 3 books, and we're super excited to have the opportunity to talk to her today about them. Thank you so much for being with us today, Teresa.
Thank you. And thanks for saying love of beagles and not obsession with beagles. That would be fair too.
It's just a hair away from each other.
They're the same in my world, right? They're totally the same.
So as Patty mentioned, you are an award-winning author. A few of your books, obviously. The Dog Survived and So Did I. The Dogs Were Rescued and So Was I. And then your latest one, Poppy in the Wild. If you could give us just a little teaser about each of those, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, sure. So the Dog Lived and So Will I is, that was my first one. And that's the story of a beagle that I had then. His name was Seamus. It was the story of Seamus and I both surviving cancer. So Seamus got diagnosed first, and that was like really my first experience at all with cancer. No one in my family had ever had it, no friends, anything. And at that point in time, I don't even think I realized how common cancer was in dogs. So I went through the experience with him, and he was not expected to survive. They had told me that with surgery and chemotherapy, he would live maybe a year. And 3 years later, he was alive and well, and I got diagnosed with cancer. So it was kind of like everything I learned by going through it with him, including staying positive about the prognosis. So it started as a blog, and then it turned into a book, and apparently resonated with a lot of people because that's the book that hit #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. My claim to fame for the rest of my life. #1 New York Times bestseller. So. And then the sequel to that was The Dogs Were Rescued and So Was I. And that was the kind of post-cancer life where I started trying to look into ways to improve our lifestyle, both for the dog and me, so that cancer would not come back into our lives. And in the process of that, discovered a lot about diet, nutrition, which led me then to learn about our food system and what happens to the animals, and also kind of the chemicals that we use around our house and how bad that is for us and for animals. And that also, I learned about testing on animals, which I did not know a lot about. And in particular, beagles. They test a lot of beagles, and that kind of horrified me. And so besides changing our lifestyle, I also adopted a dog who had been rescued from a laboratory. And that's Percival. So he stars in the second book. And then we got another dog, Daphne, who had been basically used by a breeder and then abandoned on the street. So both had kind of traumatic backgrounds that we changed a lot about our lifestyle and theirs. And that's the story in the second book. And the third book, the one that just came out this past October, I used to joke that I write about tragedies that happen to me and my dogs with happy endings. But I didn't want to make a career out of that because I have to live through the tragedy.
Exactly.
And then along came Poppy. So Poppy was rescued by the same group that rescued Percival from the laboratory, Beagle Freedom Project. But she was rescued from China, from the Chinese dog meat trade. So she came over nearly feral, basically, and we were supposed to be fostering her. You can see how that went. We were supposed to be fostering her, and she went to a potential adopter. And in the middle of a storm, they took her out for a walk. A storm broke out. She somehow twisted out of her harness and ended up running first through a bunch of busy city streets and then into a 1,500-acre wilderness park in the middle of a storm.
Uh,
And so we spent quite a lot of time, 5.5 days, it turns out, searching for her. And I learned so much about what you do, and more importantly, don't do when your dog goes missing, that I thought, about 2 days in, I said to Chris, my significant other, if this has a happy ending, apparently I have my third book, because this is yet another tragedy, and we're learning so much. But mostly there was, like I said, we learned so much, and we had done so much wrong initially. And I'm a person, I thought I knew a lot about dogs, and yet I did so much wrong. That I wanted to write this book. I was like, I want to get this information out there. I want people to understand what you do and how you find a lost dog, because you can kind of tell Poppy's not a huge dog. And she was even littler then, because I think she was kind of still a puppy. She might have been a year old, maybe not. And so like 19 pounds, I think at the time, 18, 19 pounds. And as opposed to her whopping 22 pounds now. And she was lost in 1,500 acres of wilderness and survived. And we were able to find her. So I just felt like it was a lot of information that needed to be out there, plus a kind of really good adventure story. So and I always let people know the endings. So it's not a spoiler alert. She lives and we find her. There she is.
Yeah, this is the book. We have a link to it in down below or up above, wherever you're watching this. Definitely grab a copy. Great story. Really, you can get on Amazon, anywhere booksellers sell books. But yeah, thank you for the synopsis. Amazing. I mean, how do you get started? Like you're writing a blog, but what gets you thinking about becoming an author, right? Because, you had another career. I mean, you still have a career, but, in law, but like what kind of got you started to think about being an author and putting, I mean, to me, it would make sense. This actually, like, oh, there's so much information. On if you lose your dog, what do you do? Like, let's put this down on paper, get it out to people so that they have that information. But, your first experience, facing cancer with your dog and then with yourself, what kind of led to that transition of, I mean, that's a big step, like just getting out there and writing a book, right? That's not the first thing everybody thinks of doing.
Right.
How did that start?
Poppy's curious too, obviously. So I'd always loved to write. I've always been a big reader, and I've always loved to write. Law school kind of kicked both of those things out of me, because you don't have time for that other than the writing that goes with schoolwork. And about probably 15 years ago now, maybe a little more than that, I decided I really wanted to get back into writing. So I started taking some writing courses. That's actually how I met Chris, my significant other, through this writing class. Yeah. But I was writing fiction, and that's mostly what I read, and that's what I liked. And so that's what I thought I would be writing. And nothing published, just writing. Like a lot of writers, I've been working on the same novel for 1,000 years. And now technology would solve every single problem my protagonist had. So I either need to set it back in the 90s or give up on it. But when this happened, I did not, when I got diagnosed with cancer, I didn't even really know about blogs. I think I followed like one blog. This was 2009. And I got so tired of repeating the same story over and over again to everybody that I talked to. And you get kind of tired of talking about cancer all day long, especially because it's not a happy topic. And no one knows that Chris actually had suggested that I set up the blog. And so he did, I should say. And I kind of learned how to blog, and I found it was very therapeutic to kind of report in every day. And my way of dealing with things, you've read the book, so is kind of dark humor. So it apparently resonated with a lot of people. And while I started the blog as a way of just letting my friends and family know what was going on without having to repeat it 19 times a day, it actually got some traction. As I used to joke, it turns out that World Wide Web really is worldwide. And so it got a lot of traction. And and this was kind of the heyday of blogging too. So it got picked up in a lot of different women's magazines, and I got interviewed in a lot of different, about breast cancer bloggers and whatnot. And then a lot of people started saying, you should write a book. You should write a book. And I was like, like, that's so easy. You know?
Exactly. That's my question is like, okay, yeah, just
Yeah,
because you
yeah.
think of
Boom.
it, like,
You know,
yeah,
and it's not like you just can print out the blog and have a book, because the blog is
Right.
very raw and books can't really be that way. And then I also sort of felt like, well, I've already told you everything, like I've been blogging, but I realized what I hadn't told was the dog story. And there's also there's the romance story of how Chris and I met, and that was kind of, we met and started dating right at the beginning of when my dog got diagnosed with cancer.
Okay.
So there was a lot of drama in that too. So I thought, well, let's see. Because I was a writer, I knew it was a good story. I hoped it had a happy ending.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to finish the book. And when I got diagnosed with cancer, one of the first things I did, because like I said, I'm a big reader myself, as all writers are, I went to the bookstore to try and find a book that would kind of help me through this experience. And I couldn't find what I needed. There was a lot of heavy medical stuff, and I didn't want to read that. I figured the doctors will teach me that. And there was a lot of sad stuff where the cancer patient died. And I was like, that's not really what I want to be focused on right now either. So I did what they tell you to do. I wrote the book that I wished was out there when I got diagnosed. And apparently I was right about it, because it did pretty well. It still does well. It's been translated into, I think, 8 languages now, and was also a bestseller in Brazil for several months. So it's been quite a, so it launched a side career in writing for me.
Yeah. Well, and thank goodness it did. I mean, really, the information that you're providing, and you know, I haven't read your first 2, but this was such a wonderful read, and so much valuable information. So the story is really, you know, it's hard to say that it's a fun story, but it is. It keeps you going, right? Because it keeps you involved. You're definitely in tune, even though you give out the answer. The answer, the lost dog is found, right? On the cover. You still want to know how, right? And I think all of us have either known somebody who's lost a dog, or we've lost a dog. Like my husband and I lost our beagle. She was about 15 and a half years old. The day we were moving into our house. So we were in an apartment, packing up our stuff and loading it into the U-Haul, had the door open to, you know, we're carrying these big boxes, and our dog was very well, her name was Daisy. She's very well behaved. She knows to kind of stay in, you know. Well, she got to the front door as my husband was leaving with a big box, and I was just going to follow behind him and kind of close the door because his arms were full. And there was a hot air balloon right above her head that freaked her out completely. Our apartment complex sounds very similar to the very busy area that Poppy was running across. It was like a 6-lane interstate highway that this apartment complex and shopping center was off of. And she took off, and we'd only lost her for 3 hours, but what do you do? And the emotion, like we went chasing after her, and of course she's too fast. We couldn't catch up. And
even at 15 and a half, right? There's no way you're catching.
Oh no, she was like bound and determined to just get away from that balloon. Well, of course the thing is like it wasn't like way up in the sky. It was like, I mean, almost like you could touch the thing. It just launched, and scaring the living daylights out of her. And you know, there's so much emotion, and it's hard to think clearly. Having this as a resource, if this ever happens to us again, or if I know of anybody that this happens to, this is such a valuable resource. I would say every dog owner should have this on their shelf. You know,
I would say that too.
Well, yeah, and I'm being objective. Like the information in here that you learned is so helpful. And you know, God forbid that happens to anybody's dog. But I remember in 3 hours, I was a mess and crying, and, you know, oh, we'll never get her back. And my husband was reassuring. And the next hour he was crying and a mess. And I was like, okay, no, you know, like we're trying to buoy each other's spirits and, you know, try and get through this whole thing. And if we had some way of like some information to have that could help you think clearly in such an emotional time, right? Help you kind of have steps to follow and things to do. And
Because
not give
part
up
of that,
hope.
having that plan helps keep you calm too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And being calm
exactly.
is important. Like, instead you're just like, well, what on earth do I do? This is a
Right.
plan. And in my case, because I was put in touch with these pet rescue specialists, I had these very calm, very authoritative, very knowledgeable voices, not in my head, actually on my
Right.
phone.
Right.
But in my head sometimes, telling me what to do. I do want to mention, because I don't want people to feel like in an emergency they have to read a 300-page book to figure out all the details. There is an appendix in the back that is very sets out the steps about what to do and what not to do.
Exactly.
And that's to me a very important part of the book.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
I think too, just having the knowledge that there are people out there that are pet recovery specialists, because I had never heard it. Like, just knowing that alone is a huge weight off you, because you're like, oh, there's somebody that knows how to do this.
Yeah.
And then the other part that is so counterintuitive is because when you think of it, you're like, yeah, we'll do whatever we need to do, but everything that you do instinctively is wrong. Like, it's just wrong. Yeah. So having that knowledge, and then having the knowledge that there's somebody out there that knows the steps, that can kind of tailor it for your dog, for your location, whatever it is, that they can really kind of give you that guidance that you need. And we all need that guidance, because what we're going to do initially is going to be wrong, because
you're going to panic. Yeah. And the two specialists who helped me, Babs Fry and Mike Nim, their phone numbers are in the book as well, because one, they do this for everybody. As long as you're listening to them and doing as they ask, they're going to keep working with you. And I want people to know they don't have to be in your neighborhood. Like, they can. I never met Mike and Babs in person until I threw a party to thank everybody who came out to help with Poppy about a month and a half or so after probably a month after we actually found her. We were waiting for good weather. It's February in California. No, I'm kidding. We had a lot of rainstorms, but they can help by phone. And one of the things that amazed me is Babs was probably doing it too, but I knew Mike was doing it because he was sending me screenshots. He was using satellite maps, like on Google, to look at where I was telling him she was and where we had the sightings. And he could look at the area on Google satellite maps and kind of figure out what her pattern was and where she was likely to be. And as he explained, there's a lot of high tech involved, but it's the low tech that gets them home, which is the flyers and getting word out and getting sightings and whatnot. But the high tech can kind of help figure out where those things go. And so, I did not know about pet recovery specialists either, but now, I know there are a lot of them, and it's becoming more common. Apparently they used to be called pet detectives, but I think the Jim Carrey movie might have ruined that for people wanting to be taken seriously. So they're, I think we're going to lose Poppy here. She might be getting.
Well, we've certainly enjoyed whatever time we have with her. And again, I mentioned this before we went live, but I love her little lipstick smear. You talk about that in the book.
Yeah.
So cute.
It always makes her look like she's smirking a little bit, or I call it smeared lipstick.
I love it. Such a cutie pie.
So
yeah, she's sweet. Well, no, she's staying, I guess.
We'll take her for as long as she's with us. Oh my gosh.
Right. So there are missing pet recovery specialists. There's a lot of groups on Facebook too. So I think people can kind of find what's the one in your area. Just be prepared in case it happens to you. Because actually the statistics on dogs going missing is pretty high. I think it's like it's like 7 out of 10 will go missing at some point in their lifetime, whether it's for 3 hours or 5.5 days. Or you hear all these amazing stories where, the dog's been gone for a year and somebody finds them. It's just, Okay, I have to let her down because she is wiggling.
That
so now we have to go with my fake beagle.
Yay!
That was one of the things that was really hopeful too, because you think, like, if you've never had it happen to you before, if you've never had a dog go missing, and then in that moment, you're thinking if they're gone for 5 hours or a day or overnight, you're never going to get them back. And the stories of like, no, just be calm, be patient. This can take months. This can take, not that you want it to, but the fact that there's still hope. It's very realistic that you shouldn't give up. You need to keep on trying. And months later, you can still get that pup back. That's
I mean, 5.5 days felt like months to
Oh,
me.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
But as Babs kept saying to me, it's a marathon, not a sprint. It's a marathon, not a sprint. You just have to think of it that way, which also meant trying to take care of myself and make sure I ate and got enough sleep, which I was terrible at both of those things. But I would have had to get better had she been lost longer, because like that was the other thing they kept telling me is I'm the night shift, because I would be out there at night sitting where we kind of knew her area was, sitting with roasted chicken and my dirty socks and a blanket and her toy, and just sitting waiting for her to smell and kind of show herself. And I would do that late at night and early in the morning, because that's them. They become like wild animals, especially frightened like that. And so that's when they would be out looking for food. So that's when I needed to be out there. And then we would have people out plastering the neighborhood with flyers, not chasing the dog, not calling the dog, just plastering the neighborhood with flyers, so that people would call in with sightings, which actually worked. We got a sighting, at least one sighting every day, which is how we were eventually able to figure out what her pattern was and where she was hanging out. So it was truly amazing, which also kind of kept me going. Like I would get really down and think, oh, this is impossible. It's 1,500 acres. It's still raining. There's coyotes. There's mountain lions. You know, this is going to be impossible. And then somebody would call and say that what she was doing was staying in the canyon, but popping up into neighbors' backyards to get either water or food, because, you know, humans were kind of messy, and a lot of people feed their animals outside. So they'd have cat food or dog food outside. So she was popping up to get into their yard. Oh, just realized, didn't mean that as a pun. Poppy was popping up into their yard to get water or food. And then, you know, as soon as someone spotted her and opened their back door or something, she would run back into the canyon to hide out. So we kind of were able to figure out the area where she was based on those sightings. And we would not have had those sightings if we had spent all our time out walking through the canyon and the wilderness part, calling to her. She would have just stayed hidden. So they had to focus on getting those flyers out there and getting, as they kept saying to me, you want thousands of eyes on her, not just the 20 or 30 pairs that you can get out there walking through the canyon. That's not going to help. You want them out in the neighborhood, and you want the whole neighborhood watching. So it was now in hindsight, it was a fascinating experience, and I learned so much. That's why I wrote it. Terrifying to go through it.
Yeah, something you wouldn't wish on anybody, right? But it is fascinating. Even just learning about some of the right people to help kind of keep an eye, like the grounds crew on a golf course, right? And I've heard of like tell your postal workers and, you know, the bus drivers and like people that are just out regularly all the time that have jobs where they're driving everywhere. Security guards and mall parking lots and stuff.
The groundskeepers at golf course was surprising to me, but made total sense. Like they're there early in the morning. They know everything that's going on. And then they gave some other, like, you know, I guess medium tech things like that when we were out walking around with the flyers, to, if you pass somebody, like this wilderness park is not just wild wilderness. I mean, there's hiking trails and people jog through there and whatnot. So, and I can't stop them from doing that. I can't be like, oh, you're going to scare my dog. I'm going to need you to not do this today. And if you hand a jogger a flyer, they're not going to take, but they said have people take a picture of it on their phone. Most people are willing to do that, and then it's with them all the time, and they're not going to throw it away. And if they happen to see the dog, it's easy for them to know, you know, oh, that's the dog, and go right back to their phone.
Just
and
brilliant.
they had to do things like, as you're walking the neighborhood leaving flyers, if you see that somebody has like a Ring camera, walk up to the camera and hold the flyer to it. It will alert them. They will see it, and again, they will have it on camera. And I was like, that makes so much sense. I'm not a techie person, so I probably never would have thought of those things. But just, I mean, and they had hundreds of really helpful tips like that. So I put as many as I could remember and get right in the book.
Well, and I think too, kind of trusting those sightings as well, because I know you were like, we've never heard her bark, so that can't be her in a particular part. But the truth is, they're acting differently in this sort of natural environment. Like, you don't know for sure, so trust the sightings, unless you know where you can, and especially if you're starting to look like on the maps and kind of figure out, oh yeah, they could get over to that part. like you're thinking like a human and how you would have to walk to a place necessarily. But if you really look at, you know, as the crow flies or as the dog walks, yeah, you get to that part over there pretty easily. Like, even though it seems like it's far away, driving through the neighborhood, yeah, it would be, but not if they're cutting back into
not
the
far to a dog.
Yeah.
Yeah, because a few miles in a day is nothing to a dog. I'd be dead, but it's nothing to a dog, you know. And then I had to kind of get past my own psychological blocks. Like, there were one of the sightings, the only way she could have gotten there was to cross a very busy street, boulevard, basically. And I was just like, no, she wouldn't have done that. No, because I just couldn't let that be in my head that she did it. But as they pointed out to me, she probably did it at 2:00 in the morning, and it probably wasn't such a busy street. And it was a very good sighting because the guy was like, I'm positive it's the same dog. And we were like, oh, okay. So that I spent that night sitting on the neighbor's lawn where they had spotted the dog, which was another fun story. But
so people though that really helped you, right? I mean, that really opened their hearts and homes and backyards and all of that to help. I mean, it just does give you some faith in mankind, and you know that people are out there to. I mean, because I would be so shy. I mean, even in my desire to try and get people to find the dog. I mean, I'm just an introvert to begin with, and to go up to strangers and go, will you take this flyer or take a picture of this, you know? But really and truly, there are more people out there that would be more than happy to help. You just have to speak up and let them know and get the word out and all of that.
And that's a good point too, because one of the tips that was in the category of things most people do wrong is they were very adamant to not put a reward on the flyer. Don't say reward. Right. Because if you put two reasons. One, people are naturally going to want to help. If not you, the dog. You know, if you're the type of person who's going to help, who's going to find a dog, who's going to be concerned, they're going to do it whether there's a reward or not. If they have the knowledge, because the flyers are out there and they see the dog, they're going to act. What putting reward on it does is bring out the bad actors. So someone's now like, oh, I'm going to get $1,000 if I just chase this dog down. They're going to chase the dog. The dog's going to run into traffic. And that's going to be it. It's going to have a terrible ending. Or you're going to have people who give bad tips. They're going to give fake sightings in the chance that maybe she does turn up there and they can get the reward. And again, once they say that to you, you go, oh, yeah, unfortunately, that kind of makes sense. I can totally see that happening. And our experience was, plenty of people came out to act without there being a reward offer at all. I mean, we had so much help. Neighbors, people calling, people out there putting up the flyers, people watching everywhere they went. And, you know, when he told us about the golf course and I needed somebody, I wasn't a member of that country club, not a member of any country club. I needed somebody to go and post, you know, and talk to the groundskeepers and post nearby. So just posted on Facebook, and a friend of a friend said, I'm a member, I'm coming over right now. I'll get the flyers from you. And just immediately did it. And nobody was asking for rewards. Everybody was trying to find Poppy.
Well, and you had people driving miles and miles from home to come up and help search or put flyers up or do whatever was needed, right?
I had people coming from Los Angeles. And just so you know, people who live in Los Angeles don't leave Los Angeles to go to Riverside, to go east, because the traffic is horrendous. People in Riverside go to LA because we have to, but people in LA don't go to Riverside. We had lots of people come out, and sometimes it took them hours to get out there, and they still did it and helped. And again, it was raining, and people were out there in a storm walking around for this dog that all of them had never met. I think maybe one or two of them who came out had actually been there the night she came in from China, because she came with 12 other dogs. So the Beagle Freedom Project family, though, it really is a family. The people who foster and adopt these dogs are really like family, because you go through a lot with the dogs. They come from pretty tragic backgrounds, and the kind of rehabilitation stage need a lot of support. So everybody's there for each other.
And for somebody like my husband and I, we had just moved to the area when we bought this house. So we had no family or friends in the area, nobody to really help us do a search. So for people like that, I think one of the lessons that I picked up in your book was and there wasn't so much of it, I don't think, at the time, because this was, you know, almost 20 years ago. But you know, reaching out to rescue groups on Facebook, because they're already networked with a lot of dog loving people who, if they can't or won't come out to help, they'll know somebody who will or can, right? So just the networking aspect of it, that social media, I think, has just been huge about, and even for sightings and taking a picture and posting it to the group, and, you know, here's a lost dog. Has anybody seen it? You know, does anybody know its owner? I see those, you know, fairly regularly in my news feed and stuff on Facebook.
Yeah, there's a lot of lost dogs of certain area Facebook groups, and that it's a great place to go to and post, and it keeps people looking out. And it's easier than walking around with flyers, although you need to do both. But,
yeah, but if you're looking for people to help, I think, you know, social media and these groups, there are quite a few out there that can help be hands on the ground, you know, boots and hands on the ground to get flyers up and more eyes out there looking and everything. So we've got Dawn with us today. Thank you, Dawn. She said the dog community is a true committed community for all dog people. You're sure right about that. That's so true. I was reading the book and I wanted to hop in my car and drive to California and go find Poppy. So, like, I could totally see people going, you know what, whatever I'm doing right now doesn't matter. Somebody's in need. They've lost their dog. You know, I can do it. I'd be there to help. You know, I think there are a lot of people that would be happy to do that.
I've had people who actually participated in helping to find Poppy, who've read the book and said they were still anxious about it, because even though they knew the happy ending, they were still like kind of like bringing it back and whatnot. But that's in part, that's why I think in all three of my books I give away the ending, and I always tell people I write with happy endings, because who wants a dog book with a sad ending? I mean, especially in this day and age. But I also give it away because I think dog lovers are such passionate dog lovers that like, I love dog books and I love dogs, but I'm not going to pick it up if something bad is going to happen to the dog. I mean, obviously something bad happens to the dogs, but without the happy ending. So I I felt very strongly about like just letting people know it's still a good story, even though you know the ending. Like, you're going to need to know the ending so that you can get through it. Otherwise you maybe wouldn't pick it up. And the first book, I mean, literally, the dog lived, and so will I. And I will still have people come up to me at signings and be like, "Oh, I'm sure it's a great book, but I can't read it because the dogs always die."
Right on the cover.
The dog lived. You know, nobody worries about whether or not I'm going to die. Apparently,
right.
But the dog must not die. So I was thrilled that the publisher kept the title, and they agreed. They were dog lovers too, and they agreed. Like, no, we need to let people know, especially something like cancer. You want to know that the dog knows that there's
a positive, because precisely what you were saying. For when you're out there looking for the book that wasn't available for you when you were looking, like, this lets people know, hey, this is a positive thing to focus on if you're going through this, or if you know somebody that's going through it and you want something to kind of stay positive about and be, you know, just give you that little bit of hope that you're needing when you're going through a difficult time. So,
and I think, or I hope, in all three books, I dealt with difficult topics, you know, cancer, animal testing, and, you know, losing a dog. But I hope, and I meant to do it with a sense of humor. So it kind of gives you, you know, it's not.
There's some levity there.
Levity there, and kind of helps you get through it and read it, but still getting valuable information to you. At least that was my goal in all three books. So hopefully.
No, absolutely. So we've got another. Hi, Meg. Thanks for joining us today. She says Teresa's book is such an eye opener for us to educate us on what not to do. It can save so many lives and heartache. And that's so true. Really. Thank you so much, Teresa, for putting this book together. If you haven't picked up a copy of it, there's a link in the comments here or in our description. Poppy in the Wild. Be sure to grab a copy of it. We had Poppy on earlier. So if you're just joining us, Poppy was with us, and she's safe and adorable as ever. And yeah, and so, and watch, if you're watching on the replay, thank you so much for being here with us. Meg says, and you achieved that goal, Teresa, in all your books. So that's very thoughtful and sweet of you to say.
Thanks, Meg.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. So we know where to get the book. Where else can we find out more about you and your other books and everything else that you're...
My other books, my other dogs, they get jealous. We have 3 beagles currently. Talk about heart hounds. We have 3 right now. You saw Poppy. We think she might be mixed with Jack Russell Terrier.
Yeah.
A little, or maybe Rat Terrier or something. But she's a beagle in spirit. She's definitely a beagle in spirit.
You bet.
My website is teresarhyne.com. So it's TERESARHYNE.com. And you can find links to, and it's usually Teresa J. Rhyne on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.
Okay.
I believe. I never have to find myself, but
I know.
Yeah, I wasn't terribly clever. It's just my name on things.
Dawn says your books are excellent and she's loved the first 2. Well, you've got to grab you got to grab this one.
Yeah, you're one behind. Now, come on.
Yeah, this came out in October. Come on, get with it.
I know.
It's only been 2 or 3 months.
Like, what's happening in October now?
Yeah. No, I said it earlier. I really believe it. I think everyone who has a dog, or if you know somebody that has a dog, this would make a great gift. It should be on your shelf. As Teresa said, not only if you read the 300 pages of the book for a really enjoyable story, but the appendix in the back has so much valuable information on what to do if your dog is lost, or if you know somebody who has lost a dog. Even just adopting a couple of the suggestions, I mean, is steps above what we would all be doing, ourselves. So definitely worth having a copy on your bookshelf.
Yeah.
So.
And for people that are going through it, recommending this book and telling them you can go right to that appendix and go through there and start just adjusting the things that you've been doing so far. It is really a how-to. It really does walk you step by step. It couldn't be more helpful right in the immediate need of it. And then once you actually find your dog, then you can go back and read through the story.
And commiserate, right?
And there's also information in there on what to do when you do find your dog, because there's kind of a decompression period, and you have to change a little bit of your own behavior too. So
all really great stuff. Thank you so much for being with us today. So that said, we have a giveaway winner to announce. They're going to be winning a copy of this book. And our giveaway winner, drum roll please, is Susan Kramer. Yay, Susan! Congratulations.
And you'll send me Susan's contact info.
Yep.
So, and Susan, Poppy will also potograph the book for you.
Oh, adorable.
We got a little Poppy and Ro, who you'll find out who Ro is in the book, who is one of our beagles now, but he makes a big appearance in the book. And we have stamps made of both of their paws, so they potograph the book.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's awesome. That's fantastic. Yeah, we'll get in touch with you, Susan, and we'll make sure that the book gets out to you right away as quickly as possible. But thank you so much, Teresa, for your time with us today. Oh my gosh.
This was fun. Thank you.
A lot of fun. So happy to see Poppy. I mean, even myself, after knowing at the beginning that Poppy was okay, and even after reading it, I was so excited to sit with you today and actually see Poppy, because she's now in my heart. Well, she's now in my heart, right? Like she's, I'm worried about her now. I got to make sure she's okay. Not that she's not, but it was so great to see her. I'm going to watch the replay again and again just to see her getting some snuggles.
Your cute little face. Yeah, she still doesn't howl much, by the way, but she did. I think I mentioned in the end that when we got her back, she now howled, and it sounded like a coyote. Very much like a coyote, and we're like, oh, that's where she found her voice, out the wilderness. She now sounds like a beagle. So her brothers have adjusted that howl.
They taught her.
She's like, oh, like that. Okay.
That's awesome.
She's doing great. She's super healthy, and she's happy and not nearly the scared feral pup
Yeah.
she was when we got her.
That's
So she's doing great.
so
That's
wonderful.
wonderful. Yeah.
That's
That's
great.
great
Well,
to hear.
thank you everybody for being with us today. And if you're watching on the replay, thank you for joining us. Please enter your comments or suggestions or happy wishes or anything to Poppy and or Teresa. Obviously, she was the one that, Poppy was scared, but, as a human, not being able to, not knowing what to do or not being able to do the things you think you should be doing, it's tough. It's tough as a human, right? As a pet parent to go through the tribulations these pet fur kids put us through. So anyway, thank you so much, everybody, for being with us today. Have a great rest of your day. And thank you, Teresa, for being with us. Really, such a pleasure.
You. This was nice.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.